What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and once again I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40k. I'm continuing the little series that I've got going for each faction and how their lore translates to the tabletop. There's going to be a playlist so you guys can check them all out, but for now I've covered Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, the Tau Empire, and the Grey Knights, and today we're covering one that fits in two of those categories, and that is the Adeptus Custodes. So the Adeptus Custodes are an interesting faction because they play somewhat like a Grey Knights, but they're supposed to be more elite. And unfortunately, the lore for them has been kind of skewed a little bit, because yes, in their inception during the heresy, they were out fighting against like the Maragal and that kind of thing. They were fighting alongside the Emperor, and then during the events of the heresy, when Horus took down the Emperor, I guess you could say, for whatever that means, the Emperor was interred upon the Golden Throne, and then the Custodes, they took kind of a different role. They became bodyguards, almost like the hand of the Emperor. They were there to protect him. If the Emperor needed anything done, he'd speak to them psychically and they'd get it done. But for the most part, they didn't really go anywhere. They stayed on Terra. They protected like the Himalayan mountain vaults of like all those like crazy beasts and demons and whatnot. And it wasn't until recently that we got a lot more information on the Adeptus Custodes. So the Custodes have now once again traversed the galaxy. They have gone out to try and retrieve the prisoners of these vaults, because they did escape. There's also different factions within the Adeptus Custodes. You have different armor types, so they're not just all gold. There's like white and gold, there's black and gold. I forget what they're called. I want to say it's like the Solar Vexilla or something like that. With the ability to stop time and rewind time, I have now found out the answer. So they're called the Solar Watch. These are the guys that don the white, the gold, and the red, and the ones that don the black, gold, and red armor are these Shadow Keepers, and there's a few more different, I guess, subcategories of the Adeptus Custodes. But the thing to remember is that no matter what paint job they have on, these guys predate Space Marines. They predate maybe even Thunder Warriors, because the thing about it is that these guys are old as shit, and they were specifically each created by the Emperor himself. And they're stronger, faster, and overall much better than the Space Marine. So they are essentially the elite of the elite, the next best thing that only gets surpassed by the Primarchs and the Emperor himself. So these guys are no laughing matter. They're super smart, super powerful, because they are given the best weapons, the best armor, and they know exactly how to use it at the most efficient of ways. Now, with that being taken into account, does this actually translate well on the tabletop? If you're looking strictly at the line that Games Workshop has for Warhammer 40k for these guys, I don't think so. They have very few models, very few options, I guess you could say, for the Adeptus Custodes in just 40k. To really feel the ferocity and the strength of the Adeptus Custode, you have to look beyond. You have to go into Forge World. And Forge World is where they shine the best. You have access to really, really strong units, such as the Telemon Heavy Dreadnought, which is probably one of the most durable units in the entire game. This Dreadnought means business. It looks intimidating. It's just a beast of a unit to have. And it makes sense because these guys are essentially the best of the best. It was also revealed in the most recent lore that I think it's the Yellow King is actually an Adeptus Custode. So there's definitely going to be more lore to come from that. Honestly, I can't wait to see how this shakes up the 40k universe. The other thing too is that Trazian supposedly has a custody in his vaults. What does this mean for the Necrons? One can only speculate at this time, but there are inklings to give us that yes, within the lore of 40k as it progresses, we will be getting more in-depth look at the Adeptus Custodes in the lore. And what that means is that eventually we're going to be getting new units, newer rules for our Adeptus Custodes to play on the tabletop. As of 9th edition, surprisingly, the Adeptus Custodes are pretty good. They've won a few tournaments here and there, and you gotta remember that during COVID there weren't a lot of tournaments going on, so that may be skewing a few of the results, but still, these guys are winning. And it just boggles my mind how an elite army with low model count can hold objectives and keep them without being blown off the board. Because honestly, I thought this edition was all about horde armies. The more bodies you have, the more shots you're firing, the more dice you're rolling, the chances are you're going to live longer, take objectives, and overall just overwhelm your opponent, especially one who's playing Adeptus Custodes. But that's not the case. These guys are durable, they bring the firepower, and they can be very, very mobile. The jet bikes from Forge World, give them to a captain, and this guy is nearly unkillable, fast, and he hits like a damn truck. And not just that, but there's a bunch of stratagems and a bunch of special rules that you could use to your advantage to just mow down hordes of enemies. So all in all, this army is pretty accurate to its lore. Unfortunately, one thing that I am going to bring up in the lore that to me didn't make much sense is that the Mara Gal, the demonically possessed Chaos Space Marines, were butchering these guys. They were literally ripping out the spines out of the Adeptus Custodes, which I don't know if they should have been getting their asses kicked that bad. I mean, you could say they were getting, they were surprised and they weren't expecting to fight demonically possessed Chaos Space Marines, but when you look at the Mara Gal, the word bearer's version of essentially a possessed Chaos Space Marine, like, they shouldn't be that much of a threat to these demigods, but apparently they are. So that's the only thing that kind of hinders them in the lore, for me at least. Besides that, these guys are like I said, they're demigods. They're gods among men, stronger than Space Marines, stronger than Primaris. Because even though Belisarius' Call did improve upon the Space Marine, they're still inferior to the Adeptus Custodes, as can be seen when the Custodes butchered the Brazen Drakes just by even thinking that these guys were siding with Chaos. So yeah, these guys are badasses. They've got the oiled abs to prove it. And on the tabletop, these dudes hit hard, hit fast. They've got a lot going for them, as long as you incorporate Forge World. So let me know what you guys think about the Custodes in your games, or if you've been reading like the Horus Heresy novels, how have the Custodes been portrayed to you? Hopefully as utter badasses in both. But yeah, this is another awesome instance where the lore translates pretty damn well to the tabletop. You're not going to be seeing hordes of Adeptus Custodes because obviously there's only a few, but each one can pull their weight. But when one does fall on the tabletop, you do feel it. If you lose a squad, oh boy does it hurt. But yeah, with that being said, guys, let me know what you think down below. If you like what I've been doing with this little series, check out the playlist, which I'll have linked. And if you guys want other races for me to talk about in lore to tabletop translated, let me know which one you want next. Maybe the Tyranids, or perhaps the Necrons. Thank you for listening, guys, and as always, if you want to support us, you can always head on over to our Patreon page, where you guys can pledge just a simple $1 a month, and that really helps in us giving you content each and every day. Thanks again for watching, and this has been The Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.